Well, welcome back to another episode of Ask Pastor Keith. Welcome, everyone. Pastor Keith, how are you doing today?
Doing fine, thank you.
All
How are
right,
you?
all right. I'm doing well too as well. Pastor Keith, today's question for you is how can Christians avoid burnout or fatigue?
Okay. Very good question, but it's very difficult to answer because there are many reasons why one feels burnout or fatigue and things like that. So, just remember this is a 5-minute answer to a very complex question. So, number one is that the dry out or fatigue are the symptoms of imbalance in one's life. Right, let's start from there. So, particularly one's life, how he invests or she, invests resources in one's life, that can result into dryness. That is, the time and energy and effort, concern, and all that into more secular things, like worldly things. Not necessarily bad, our responsibilities, in the taking care of family, the work, and even the hobbies and activities and the social commitment and all that, versus spiritual input and how one, spends time and energy into that area. That could be, very common in people's lives. Sunday worship once in a week or on a week is not a good enough, or small group. There has to be daily quiet times and prayer routines and all that to really sustain oneself in a spiritually alert way. Especially today, there's so much we are inundated with so much sensory input, visual, audio, and everything else going on around the world, and so that is most common area. But even in Christianity, even those who are investing a lot of time in church and doing all that, there is a discrepancy between input and output. And that is, there's a personal holiness that, as I said, like prayer routines, rhythms, studying the Word of God, quiet time, versus output of service, ministry things, and the community works and all that. When this input and output balance, if it doesn't balance out, then there is fatigue and burnout. I have seen a lot of people. Church can be very, very busy place, and sometimes some people wear many different hats. And as a result, they burn out because their input and output are not balanced. Now, when I talk to younger pastors, I usually say 60-40 is a red line. If you have an input of 60% and giving out 40%, you're already, in a very close place of a tipping point. In an ideal world, and I would say 80-20. You have input of 80 and putting output of 20, which is very difficult to do. There are so many things that are required of us. But Christianity, once again, in a perfect world, it should be done out of overflow. What God has done in my life, the output is overflow. And because of that, we do it out of gratitude and joy and humility. It's not us. It's not our self-righteousness or discipline or our own, resources. But God gives and we receive, and out of that gratitude. So the overflow. So it's a 80-20, I would say, in the ideal world. But even that is very difficult. I understand that. And then there are people who are doing that pretty good too. They are very diligent about keeping their spiritual life, a vertical relationship, if you want to say it in that way, and the horizontal output, they're pretty well, and yet they still dry out. Those people are usually neglecting emotional aspect of their life. So our spiritual life and our soul, which consists of intellect and emotion and the will, And sometimes we have the study of the Word of God, and then we read a lot of books, and all that, and yet they neglect emotional side. So they dry out in there. How do we make our emotional healthy and balanced again? We need to have pleasure in our lives, and that is a healthy hobby. And if you don't supply this healthy hobby, healthy distraction
Yeah.
from the works and responsibilities, then you are very vulnerable for unhealthy pleasure and distraction.
I see.
And that is vices, substance abuse, gambling, or various sexual sins. And these are incredibly, these days, these are very available to us through cell phone and all other means. And that's why all the more we need to have a healthy hobby that brings us pleasure. So for some people, going out to a driver range, before they go to work, or go out and play golf in the weekends, fishing, spending time with the family, going to concert, various things, sketching, and reading, and all those things has to be peppered into our life for us to have emotional agility and flexibility, so that we can care. Because if you neglect that, if you neglect to take care of your heart, let me call it as heart. If you neglect to take care of your heart is trying to take care of itself. And what's the remedy? It's being calloused. You don't care anymore. There's no compassion. There's no joy. When people come to know the Lord, there's no joy, right? And then there's a big problem there. So those are the kind of things. And apart from all these, as we grow in faith with the Lord allow us to go into the wilderness. And this is, you can be doing everything right. And then there's a season in life, spiritual life, that God seems distant, and your prayers just bounce off the sky. And you feel like you're all alone. There's no support and all that kind of things. But those are the necessary times that what you know about God cognitively, intellectually, that has to be assimilated into your life. You can read a whole lot about faith, but then those are the times that you are applying faith because things are not happening the way it's supposed to happen. And you have to believe in good God. And that's when you really grow. In other words, your faith muscle is being developed in dry wilderness experience. So that's very necessary period of time. And you shouldn't hurry that. And you have to trust the Lord even in that. And the final thing is a deliberate sin. Sin will disconnect, and you cannot hear the voice of God. And even if people tell you God's truth, your ear is deaf to it, and it doesn't hear. And so obviously you'll feel more distant from the Lord. So there are various reasons why one can feel dryness and fatigue, and it's very difficult to say one size fits all kind of thing. But generally, I would check if you are believer who not only believe but you belong to a local church and small group, that you have a community that support you and help you, and you still feel this dryness and fatigue, then I would check imbalance in how you spend your hours and energy and resources, and then the input and output balance, and how much you spend time with the Lord and how much is spent in serving and ministering, and that'll be a good place to start.
That's really speaking to my heart too as well.
Okay.
Well, Pastor Keith, thank you
You're not getting a vacation.
Well, thank you again for your insight, and I'm sure this will really benefit and help a lot of people in their walk with the Lord.
All right.
Thank you again for joining us for this Ask PK podcast, and please join us every single week on YouTube or wherever it's showing. Come join us again. Thank you. Bye.